Hey, welcome back. It's your boy Will J. Let's get into some deck brewing shenanigans. Instead of our usual where we brew something from the ground up, I'll be covering one of the pre-constructed commander decks from New Capenna, Obscura Operation. And I'll go over upgrade suggestions replacing 15 cards and a land to create a deck that's more focused, but still built for table interaction, synergy, and winning the game, while also still hopefully creating a fun experience for our friends. All for about $50. The featured face commander is Kamiz, Obscura Oculus. Kamiz is a 4-mana value 2/4 legendary cephalid rogue that costs 4, and whenever we attack, target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn, plus it connives. Connive is a new keyword that they introduced in New Capenna, and it essentially lets us draw and discard, or loot in short. And then if you discard a non-land card, that creature then gets a +1/+1 counter. Lots of mechanics, but Kamiz isn't done yet. After we connive, we can then choose another attacking creature with lesser power, and that creature gains double strike until end of turn. So that's a lot of text, a lot of steps. Kamiz is probably one of the more complicated commanders we've seen in a while because he does so many things. And this versatility can be a double-edged sword, because if you're trying to do too much, you might end up not really doing anything well. The overarching theme we're going to be building around is called personal space. Whoa, hey, who's around me right now? Who's around me? Now why don't we step up here and everybody gets stepped up, and let's get some stepped up personal space up in this place. We'll cover our usual themes of ramp, removal, and draw, but afterwards we'll also go over our other themes of recursion, get in your personal space, it hurts, and something we like to call UBP, or utilities, bombs, and personal space. Pets. The Obscura Operation Precon gives us a pretty great ramp package, and if you're just starting your collection, it's a good haul. Soul Ring, Signets, Bauble, Felwar Stone, hard to argue with any of that, and it's a great starting point. I do recommend running Horde Robber and Prosperous Thief. Treasures are a good source of ramp for non-green decks, and because of Kamiz, these guys can reliably get in. Because we love attacking, Sword of the Animist is a little pricey, but it's a card that rewards us for staying aggressive. The Precon comes with a good amount of basics, and so this card can net us a land practically every combat step. The removal speed of the Precon isn't amazing, but it does okay. I ultimately didn't change anything here, but if you're thinking about picking this Precon up, the best removal cards you're gonna get are Swords to Plowshares and an offer you can't refuse. A really interesting one though is In Too Deep. The reason I kinda like this is because even if it's a sorcery speed removal, it has split second. You're actually gonna be able to hose a creature without anyone being able to respond. That said, you do give your opponents a replacement card, so I'm not too crazy about it, but it does seem like a fun card. Our commander lets us draw with this ability, and that said, there are a lot of cards in this Precon that either let us draw or loot. I added a couple of cards to the deck's draw suite, starting with Brina the Demigod, which double hats as a draw engine and lets us go tall by giving multiple +1/+1 counters even in just one turn cycle. The other card I'd recommend is Glenn, the Voice of Calm. I know Walking Dead got some serious backlash, but if you're willing to overlook that, Connive can grow Glenn's power, and the unblockable from Kamiz means you'll end up drawing more than just one card when Glenn deals combat damage. If you really can't stand The Walking Dead, then you can go for Grazilax. Not as effective, but still draws you a card when somebody deals combat damage, plus it kinda combos with some ninjutsu cards that we'll be running later on. Because we're conniving, getting those cards back is another way to get value. There are some cards that do this in the Precon, but a couple that I added are Ghost of Ramirez Di Pietro, who can literally get us back the card that we just discarded. Not very sexy, but it is reliable, plus he has his own evasion. The other card is Living Death. It's also a little pricey and can be a little dangerous to play, but this deck can get blown out if you commit too many of your threats to the board too soon. Living Death is a mass reanimation spell, which can quickly get you back in the game, plus it also doubles as a board wipe in a pinch. Getting into someone's personal space is more than just being able to get through the defense for a hit. Sure, it probably counts as getting in their space, but when we do, we want to make it personal. Obscura Operation gives us a lot of cards that can outright steal, use, or copy our opponent's stuff. So to double down on that, I added 3 more cards that could fit within this theme. Nashi Moonsage Scion lets us play off the top of our opponent's decks, using life instead of mana to pay for the spell. Zareth San lets us steal a permanent from an opponent's graveyard, and Dazzling Sphinx lets us spin off the top for an instant or sorcery card. Just something I want to note, I purposefully didn't put any cards in here that outright steal permanents from the board. If you notice, these all either get from the graveyard, get from the library, or get from the hand. Now, you can always put more theft effects if you want to make more changes to the deck, but I find that stealing from these other zones is more thrilling and also less salty than stealing from the battlefield. Now, stealing is fun and all, but realistically, those creatures are gonna attract a lot of removal. However, because we are running other less threatening creatures, we want to make sure that we also give those guys a way to make it hurt. I added Una's Blackguard because Connive can give our creatures a +1/+1 counter so that each creature that connects will force a discard. Wand of Orcus is a 3-mana value equipment that lets us raise a small army every time we connect. And Fire Shrieker is another way to give our creatures double strike because sometimes we need evasion and double strike, and Kamiz gives those things separately. Finally, the last card I put is Medomai the Ageless. He gives an extra turn if we connect, and with double strike gives us 2 extra turns. Probably isn't a game ender, but because so many of our effects are combat based, having multiple turns means multiple combat steps. For UBP, I thought the Precon actually did a pretty great job, with Graveyard Hate and a couple of modal spells. I added a couple of cards here, namely Teferi's Ageless Insight, which allows us to double up all our draw effects, and a card from another New Capenna Precon deck, the Master of Ceremonies. If you haven't picked up a copy of this guy, I suggest you do. He ramps, he draws, and players are greedy. Don't be surprised if you end up drawing 3 off this guy, because when one opponent sees another person draw, it triggers something inside of them that they just want to draw too. To make space for these upgrades, these are the 15 cards that ended up getting cut. Life Insurance is a good card, but without an Aristocrat or Sacrifice theme, this is only going to give us incidental value. Commander Sphere is usually a solid card, but I opted for other, more synergistic ramp spells. Identity Thief gets cut because we aren't running much ETB effects, and Archon of Coronation, while we do like the Monarchy in play, is outclassed by our other 6-mana value slot options. Alayla, Nadir Kraken, Whirler Rogue, and Chasm Skulker all form this token sub-theme, but we're not really looking to go wide. Andrana, Liberator of Malakir, and Ink Fathom Witch both support that token sub-theme by pumping our army, but again, probably more suited for another style of build. Champion of Wits has a nice ETB, but with light Graveyard synergy, it just doesn't make the cut. And Treasure Cruise gets cut because we aren't really looking to turbo out our Graveyard, and so we might not have enough for Delve. Graveblade Marauder looks strong in a self-mill style deck, but right now, it'd take a lot to make it work. Commit Memory is an expensive counterspell, but it's a nice wheel when it's in the graveyard. I could see keeping it, but ultimately, I had to make cuts, and the high mana value is what got this card out. The final cut is Oscar Rubbish Reclaimer. I really like his ability, and I think he's a fun build around, but with Kamiz being our main man, he ultimately got cut for more synergistic pieces. Personal Space is an interactive deck that is always looking to get in while constantly playing out threats, sometimes from our own opponents. I'll be posting the deck list in the description down below, and I left some cards in the sideboard too in case you want to go over the $50 budget. This upgrade though clocks in at 10 ramp spells, 9 removal, 11 draw, 6 recursion, 9 get in your personal space, 7 it hurts, 10 UBP, and 37 lands. And that's it for this episode. Hopefully this video helps you upgrade your Obscura Operation deck, or if you aren't the one building it, maybe share it with a friend who will. I'm thinking of making a version of this deck that's like completely built from the ground up instead of a $50 upgrade. Or maybe I'll tinker around with Oscar or Tivit, some of the other lieutenants, because they look interesting too. Or maybe something else, I don't know. Hopefully you subscribed so you find out what's coming up next, and you can follow me on Moxfield. I'm also called Friends Win Ties over there. So until next time, stay sneaky, stay breezy, and stay inspired. See ya, pals.